Welcome back to the ZERT Coffee and Chaos podcast, a show where we talk about anything and everything relating to what it means to be a survivalist and a prepared individual in today's society. I'm your host, Chris Bartagone, ZP002. Back with me, back on the show, but hasn't been with me in a minute, is Paul Taylor, Mr. X, XP0311 or 0311D. Paul, it's been a minute. Welcome back to the show. You have not been on the show while on video, so welcome to your first time on video.
Appreciate it. I've been busy, but no excuses. We still talk every now and then. I appreciate the calls.
We do. We talk often. You have been busy. You've got a lot of exciting things happening over there. You got the range set up. You've been hosting some classes. I know that we're going to have some ZERT classes coming up, but I want to just say thank you for taking some time out of your busy schedule to hop on this show with me today. I know that, when we started talking about getting you on the show, there was some topics that you wanted to discuss. Then there's some topics that both you and Jamie want to discuss. So it would be great to have both of you on the show as well. We've had some other people on the show. I have plans for other people coming on the show. So definitely thanks for taking some time. And today's episode, when I reached out, I was like, hey man, you want to get this episode recorded? You're like, yeah, and I've got another one too. So for all of you that are listening right now, be excited. Paul's going to be back on the show again.
I'm excited.
So me too. So just a couple things before we kind of get into this here. Obviously, our show formats are always on. They release every Thursday on Spotify and Apple. So if you are just doing the podcast thing and you want to just listen while you're driving, working out, doing whatever, you can do that on those two channels. It is also in video format on our ZERT YouTube channel. And then you'll just see the videos where it shows that the podcast is actually called ZERT Coffee and Chaos. And then on the YouTube channel, it is just ZERT. Someone brought that to my attention last night that it might be confusing. Normally we don't do this. We haven't done this, but we do have some affiliates that we work with here and provide benefits. It's part of the member benefit package. So today's show is actually brought to you and sponsored by DMO Knives, or Dead Moose Ops Knives. You guys have seen me talk about these before. You've seen the posts on social media. I have 2 of their knives and they are awesome. Big honking workhorse of a knife, great camp knife. I use it often to cut wood down and make kindling. It's a great piece of kit. So if you are interested in picking up one of their knives, we will put the website down below in the comments. And remember that ZERT members do get a discount to their products. So one of the features and benefits of being a ZERT member. As always, if you're watching this on YouTube, please like, subscribe, and hit that bell notification so you can get notified when a new video is uploaded. Whew. With that being said, Paul, today's episode is all about having the fortitude to be the man. Actually, how do you phrase it?
Or the woman.
Or the woman. Well, yeah, the person. Let's be correct.
The person.
Yeah. So you reached out to me today, and like I said, we do have another episode that we're gonna do, and I really like what I love that idea that you came up with. So I'm excited to talk about that one. But then today you said that you had one that was probably a little bit more. I guess probably a little bit more important for today. And I like that. And it's actually something that we have kind of touched on in the past, but I want to get a little bit more in depth with it, and B, have somebody else's perspective on it. So you have the topic of the day. So go ahead, Paul, and hit us with that topic.
Yeah, this one kind of hits home a little bit just because of owning or establishing a new company and a range. For you guys that don't know out there, is I build a range and I'm teaching on my own. I'm also teaching for ZERT, but yeah, I figured I'd buy a property that when I have downtime, it gives me something to do and I can teach locals how to protect themselves, from a basic level to an advanced level. And I've noticed recently, I don't want to say there's a lacking in society, but I think there is. And I don't think I've seen it as much with ZERT members, even though I don't know. I feel sometimes we just need a swift kick in the butt, and
I
uh,
agree.
and I'm not here to give it. It's something you got to find yourself.
Yep.
It's for most people, it's always there, but I've had the privilege, and it's actually been kind of easy for me, just being dumb enough to be in all these units in the military. Is it's kind of easy to find intestinal fortitude, to kind of suck it up. And but we get to the point where we get kind of relaxed and we get comfortable, and in doing that we don't challenge ourselves. We don't try to get better, and just and put ourselves in situations to test ourselves. And I think we should do that daily. And I think this is pretty much what I've thought about the last couple of days, because I've had quite a few people that sign up for classes and then they cancel, and it might be a little cold, might be a little wet, but I think part of that is doing this stuff, and despite the circumstances, all this outside stuff, it's good for us to go ahead and and train in situations that are uncomfortable. Like, we have to get uncomfortable, and we have to learn from that. And we could, on a daily basis, we can go out and be comfortable, but man, when that event happens, whether it's a flat tire or a storm hits or a tornado or some type of an event that we're ready for, how have we prepared for that over the year? And I'm not saying that we need to go out and you know cut a tree down and it lands on the
Well,
house to or anything, but there's things that we can do mentally, physically, to prepare for this stuff. And I think it should be our goal to go out there and learn how to be great. And
yeah,
that's
no,
all based on, I'm gonna hit on that. I gotta, believe it or not, I got notes.
good.
But
Notes are
it
great.
we need, for once I have notes. But
Okay. All right.
we're so afraid to fail, and we need to fail to be great. All it doesn't matter who it is. Michael Jordan, imagine how many times he failed before he learned how to be great. And I think that
Hmm,
even as
that's
everyday
great.
people, we should
Yeah.
do that.
Yeah.
So that's what we're talking about today. I guess it's over because I just talked about everything.
No, it's
So
definitely not over. So let's back it up a couple times, and I want to just touch.
that was a lot. I
Uh,
apologize.
no, that wasn't all that. That was great. It was the information. It was obviously it's the basis of the show, guys. So this is what it's all about. And what you just said actually hit kind of home to me because I literally somebody just asked me that. He's a friend of mine. He's done some work with me in the past, and you know listen, I struggle a lot. In fact, the month of January was a giant struggle for me, because everyone is aware that obviously while I steer the ship here at ZERT, I own a company called Clark Armory, and it's very very challenging to try and split your look at that boom. It was almost like it was on cue. It's very hard to split your focus, if you will. And January was a busy month for the ZERT side of things. We had SHOT Show. We have a lot of things happening on ZERT to prepare for this year. And you know, I- some a buddy of mine asked me, he was like, "How many times have you lost it all in your life?" And it's a great question. And he said, and he basically went on to elaborate, like, you have to lose it all in order to persevere and grow from that and learn from that. So kind of towards what you were just saying right there, like, you've got to fail in order to to make it through and evolve from that, as long as you learn from your mistakes. I had this conversation last night with somebody. Basically, you can make mistakes. You should make mistakes, because it's one of the best ways to learn and get better and make better decisions going forward. And so that's why this hits a little bit, close to home for me.
And it should hit close to home for everybody. I mean,
Exactly.
everybody has been in this situation, but most of us don't talk about it.
Right.
I wrote this quote down. I apologize for interrupting, but you
No,
hit
go
it a
ahead.
nail on the head. And I read this quote the other day, and it said, "Failing does not make you a failure." And and I mean that to me hit home. And because
Yeah.
how many times do we fail? But how many people fail and they give up?
Give up.
I'm around people all the time, and they say, you know, I'm not going to mention any names, but I always hear, you ask them if they can do something and they're like, well, I don't know how, or I can't. Like that should never be, especially, I mean, we have all this information at our fingertips. If
Right.
you don't know how to do something, you can pick up your cell phone, you can Google it, and you can figure stuff out. Like
Right.
there's no reason. Of course, we're going to fail, but the successful people are the people that fail until, they what's the firearms quote? Don't do it until you do it right. Do it until you don't do it wrong.
There you go.
And
That's a
that's
good
what
one.
we should attempt to do. Find something, find some goal, find a mission, find a task every day, just to improve,
Yeah.
to get
So
better.
And so, the title of the today's episode is, obviously, intestinal fortitude, being comfortable in uncomfortable situations. Now, Paul, for those that are new to hearing your melodic voice, um, in your past, have you been in any uncomfortable situations? And basically, that's just setting it up for. Can you give some of the new people out there a minute resume on where you might have experienced some of those uncomfortable situations?
You want to keep my resume to a minute? Wow, that's
Well,
crazy.
I want you to give. I mean, a lot of people know. I want you to give an abridged version of. I mean, because we could do a whole entire episode on your military background, but the topic of the day is actually super exciting, or interesting. So I'd like
Yeah,
to get
and
to
I'm
that.
not saying I'm that much more than anybody else. My military career, I always tell people I was just too dumb to quit. So I kept trying different things, and I was like, well, what's next and what do I want to do? And I should have just stayed in a unit and relaxed. But part of me, I was that guy that I just wanted to continue to, what's next and be better. So that's what I kind of,
Okay, so
I'm kind of paying for it now, but
no,
it is what it is. I'd
listen.
never change anything and
No,
for the
no.
world.
So for those that are not in the know, Paul started his military career as a Marine, and how long did that last?
I did 4 years active duty, a year in the reserves. Of course, everybody wants to, be special ops and joined to be recon. Didn't get the opportunity, but I spent most of my career as a scout sniper. And
Okay.
I learned real quick in scout sniper school that you must have quite a bit of intestinal fortitude to deal with everything that they put you through in that, which is, I think, so hard that they've disbanded Marine Corps Scout Sniper School. Whole other topic,
Yeah,
but
that is true.
it's what it
That
is.
is true. And
Uh,
so from there,
went to the reserves.
you decided to make a change.
Yeah.
You
Well, I
decided to
came home. I went to the
transition,
reserves.
right?
Yeah. I went to the reserves for a year. I actually missed active duty. So I went and talked to an Army recruiter, and he told me about these Army Rangers. I thought they were firefighters or, forest rangers or something. But I read a couple books, and I was like, man, these guys are just like Marines almost, but they don't have the cool uniform, but they do cool stuff. So
Okay.
I got a guaranteed Airborne Ranger contract, and again, kind of tested my intestinal fortitude. I think there's a little bit about intestinal fortitude in the final stanza of the Ranger Creed. So you live that every day, and you just, it's one of those things where it's kind of easy to test that stuff in that environment because they do it for you. You don't have a choice. You just,
Right.
get up and do what you're told and drive on, and you learn a lot about yourself. And then
And that,
I
and then,
and no and then but and then I picked up a little rank, and I wanted to, for some reason, when you pick up the rank in the military, you get further away from the fight. You don't lead from the front, you lead from the rear. And
okay.
I guess I didn't have enough deployments under my belt leading from the front, so I decided to go special forces, become a Green Beret, retired out of there, did a few deployments, 9 total. And the crazy,
Just a few, right?
yeah. Well, the crazy thing was, is you add up your months and it's on your DD 214, and I could see, it's like, well, were they 9 1-month deployments? Not exactly, but it
No.
turns out that I ended up deploying a total of 50 months. Like, man, that's like an entire enlistment for people. And
Yeah.
I'm not saying that to pat myself on the back or anything, but it just shows you that in SF and Ranger Battalion, they have this term, strong like bull, smart like tractor. So I was definitely strong like bull, because you think maybe I should just, you know, retire, put the
Hey,
feet up, but I mean, I loved
no,
doing it at the
not at all.
time, and it was exciting and it was a blast. And I always say I got a little tattoo on my arm right there, talking about my brothers. And I would rather me be over there than anybody else, because I did all these schools and this training, and I mean, that was home to me. That's where I belonged, so it definitely, but
Now, during all of that, the training and the deployed and the active duty, um, did you find yourself? I mean, I think it's a loaded question, and I think the answer is yes. I mean, obviously, you found yourself in quite a few uncomfortable situations, and there is no not remaining calm. Now, right? I mean, you have to remain a level of calm, right? I think everybody can be elevated and adrenaline takes over, but you know, you have to have some form of calmness when those situations arise. And I'm gonna jump into something real quick, and then I'm gonna come right back to it. We've referenced this YouTube channel before called the Outdoor Boys, Luke, and his name is Luke, and he's got a it's the Outdoor Boys channel on here on YouTube. And this dude lives in Alaska, and he goes out into, you know, 12 feet of snow with sometimes a snowmobile, sometimes skis, whatever. But and he films this all by himself. And there's times when he, like, the snowmobile got overturned and stuck. And I see these situations arise, and I'm just like, holy cow, this dude is remaining just level. Like, now, granted, who knows what happens off camera, and you learn how to edit it all together, but there's no camera when you're over there and you're dealing with those situations that you're in. How did you find yourself staying calm? I mean, is that something they teach you? Is that something that was ingrained in you from a young lad, or what was it?
I don't. I mean, if you knew me before I joined the military, as some of the viewers might, yeah, that definitely wasn't something that I think it's. I think with the proper training, the more you go out and put yourself in uncomfortable situations to make you more comfortable, that I mean, that gives you confidence, and it gives you
Right.
reassurance that, it's, I can't tell you how many times there's you're overseas and you hear a team on the radio, and because you can hear the local teams when we didn't call them firefights, we called them ticks, troops in contact. And when a team calls in a tick, you would listen to the radio man, and you would think that, man, I guess not a lot is going on, because the radio man is completely calm, that guy on the radio. So the
Right.
the, the people back in the rear is like, oh, it's not that big of a deal. But
Right.
then there's an ISR platform and video of the circumstances, and stuff is blowing up, and there's a huge firefight, but that that
Right.
that RTO is calm under pressure, and you're like, dude, how could you stay so calm? It's like, well, I wanted to make sure I got my point across, and I'm kind of used to it. So
Yeah.
the more you do it, it's they say the more you sweat in training, the less you bleed in combat. And I think that has to a lot to do with it. And I think I was fortunate enough to put myself in progressing through the units, and I was, I didn't do any staff jobs. I mean, we all had to do staff jobs, and nothing against staff people, but
Right.
the problem with infantry is it's not a 9 to 5 job. It's you're training. So every environment that I was in the military, I was training for war, and part of that training for war is to is to get comfortable, to become comfortable in uncomfortable situations. And I think that, and you don't have to be a soldier to do this. You should
No.
be doing this as a civilian. Everybody should do this just
Right.
to prepare for the unknown, just so if you get a flat tire, you're not freaking out. It's
Right.
something, it's like, remain calm, be positive.
Right.
As soon as, because that, if something happens and you're negative and families around you, now that's going to project onto them,
Right.
and now they're worried. So just have that, and it's hard to keep that positive attitude all the time. But if you
Yeah.
think, I might not know how to do this, but I can get through this. I'm pretty sure
Right.
the gentleman in Alaska, he puts himself in the situations he's never seen before. But it's, well, if I don't do something about this, I'm going to die. So let's
Yeah.
break this down and let's figure it out. So
Yeah, and I think that's a great message for everybody that's listening or watching, to kind of like, this is the part where, the teacher would be like, you should write this down. That's a great message, and that's a great kind of a training that you could partake on your own. You don't need a range for this. You don't need a firearm for this. You don't. I mean, if you find yourself in an uncomfortable situation, or something like as simple as a flat tire on the side of the road, you know, how do you handle that? How have you handled that? Do you stay calm in your daily work stuff? Are you experiencing situations that are stressful or uncomfortable, and how do you handle that? I know that I can check myself on the daily with that, just with the way that I interact with things that need to be done here, and even with people that I speak to on the daily basis, when it comes to work things, like just taking a step back, taking a breath, and be like, okay, like, assess the situation before you
well, the
fly off
funny
the
thing
handle.
about that is so many people don't take a step back.
Right.
They don't take, a situation happens, and we always say, you have your blinders on, you see what's in front of you. But when
Right.
you take a step back and look at the overall picture, it might help you, solve that problem, because you're looking at the whole environment around you, and you might see something, as
Yeah.
a squad leader in Ranger Battalion, and it sucked at the time, but I was told as a young squad leader to never fire my weapon. Never. I was like, why can't I fire my
Wow.
weapon? This doesn't make any sense. Like, I need to shoot people. It's like, well, if you're shooting that one person, you're doing your team and the unit a disservice, because you're focused on one point. It's my job to be a squad leader and look at the overall picture. I have guys to maneuver and shoot those individuals. For them,
Right.
I have to look in front of, take a step back, look in front of them, around them, let them know where to maneuver. If I'm focused on that one point, I'm not doing 95% of my job. I'm shoot, shooting one dude when I have 2 fire teams to shoot that dude. What do I need to shoot anybody
Yeah,
for?
exactly.
So
Right. That makes sense. Um, so, you obviously, you said that this is obviously something that hits close to home. Um, uh, are you finding yourself in current situations, that you are needing to take a step back with, and kind of evaluate this? I mean, is it something that you teach during your training? So can it correlate, or can it relate to some of the classes that you're putting on? I mean, I've taken your tactics class, your 2-man class, and there's a level of stress that you put on the students, and I think that's on purpose, right? I mean, you're doing that for a reason. I mean,
Yeah,
go ahead.
I nothing I did I invented. We're all stealing this stuff from other people. Now there are some drills that I'm like, oh yeah, I kind of put a couple drills together and kind of made up my own. And it's like, hey, anybody can use this drill. Just do a shout out to me. And it's not that big of a deal because we all steal something. But I call it, and it sounds so dumb, but I call it thinking while shooting. And it's easy to go out and learn the fundamentals of shooting a gun and do it over and over again until it's, everybody hates the term muscle memory because your muscles don't have memory. It's unconscious competence. It's just doing it until you don't get it wrong, until it's a conditioned response. And but as you learn all this stuff to get people out of their comfort zone, you do drills to kind of like catch them off guard,
Right.
whether it's a compound exercise or do stuff to, and I don't do anything like to catch them up guard, put a stick in the, in the ejection port of the AR. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but
Right.
I clean my guns for a reason. but but I like getting people on, so I have an outdoor range. And
Yes,
as
you
most
do.
of you guys know, the weather, it's February. It was just January. And what got me really thinking about this is so many people would sign up for my classes. And then they're like, well, I don't know if I'm going to show up because it's cold outside. I'm like, well, you signed up for a class in January.
Right.
And I don't know if it's going to, if I'm going to come because it's raining. Well, it's an outdoor range. It might rain. I schedule my classes 3 months ahead of time. But it got me thinking about, it doesn't matter if it's cold. The one class I taught, it was 20 degrees and windy, and half my class was beginner shooters, and they were women, and they did not want to be there. But I sat there and I watched them learn outside in 20-degree weather with the wind blowing. And I'm like, man, these women have shown me more intestinal fortitude in the last 4 hours than I have chose to embrace myself in the last
Right.
week. Like,
Right.
holy
Yeah.
cow. Like, they didn't want to be there. And it was just a wake up call that I got to really focus on this. And it's easy to do in the military because they made me. But now that I've retired, how do I improve my intestinal fortitude? How do I engage? How do I prepare? How do I train? So it really got me thinking about this. And the best part about me is, no matter the conditions, I go out to my range. I'm
Yeah.
trying to teach. I mean, my range is flooded. I've taught classes out there. It's a snowstorm. I've got great pictures on my site where
Oh,
a
yeah.
student's beard is covered in ice, and
Yeah.
I looked at him and I was like, "Is everything okay?" And he's like, "What's the next mag count? Like, what am I loading my magazine to?
Right.
I
Right.
want to
Right.
train." I was like, "Dude,
Yeah.
you're awesome.
Yeah.
You are awesome because you're not thinking about how cold you are. You're thinking about getting something more out of this, and that's what it's
Sure.
all about."
Right. And one of my one of my favorite t-shirts, it's one that I wear often, and it is from our pals company, Viking Tactics, and on the back of it says "Stay in the fight," right? And so he's got that book. There's other people out there, you're never out of the fight, and it goes back to what you just said. Like, you you don't get to choose when it happens. You can't be like, well, I'm not ready, I'm not wearing my comfortable shoes, I'm not. No, no, you deal
I
with
don't
it.
have my blanket in my
Right.
truck, something
Exactly.
we've
Like,
talked about.
right. Yeah. It's like, no, you're prepared always, and then it just like it takes over when the situation arrives, but there's no, oh, I'm not ready for it, jokingly, in that in the movie 13 Hours, when they were going to the annex to see if they could rescue um the senator there, or whoever it was, the congressman, like, I think it was put in as a joke, but the one guy was like, oh no, we can't go, my contact is, and he was like, like it was, I think it was a part of the movie and the joking part, but the guy was like, no, you need to lock that shit down, like we're going. And again, it was kind of
Contact or not,
right.
we're not
Exactly, we're
holding.
right. So like there's no, you know w- there was no getting sick, right? You didn't get a sick day when you were out, when you were in war. Like it's not like, well, I need a sick day, or I need a, like that, just it doesn't happen. So you have to dig down deep inside and figure out, I mean, what you're made of at that point. And
Well, you don't get a sick day if your hot water heater goes out.
right,
You don't get a sick day if it's in the middle of winter and you lose heat.
right,
You have to fix you have to find a way to fix those problems, or it's, I mean, it's a survival, just like combat. I mean, that in that moment is your combat.
right.
That's your warfare right there. And it might be psychological, whatever, but that's something you have to deal with. And it might be life or death.
So I'm glad you just I'm glad you just used that word. So what do you think is the bigger challenge, the psychological or the physical?
Oh my goodness, that's easy.
Right. I
That's
mean, yeah, exactly. Like, you can splint up a rolled ankle and get back into it. But if your mind is taken out, then you're done.
Your body can handle so much more than your mind thinks it can. And
Right.
it's just, I mean, I saw it in every school I went through in the military where guys quit. And the only reason why they quit was because it was psychological. They were just as strong, if not as strong as me, but
Right.
they just mentally broke. And that's
Yeah.
all it takes. I mean, you can break many ways spiritually. I mean, you can literally break a leg,
Sure.
but your body will go, I mean, that, how long can your body last without food, without water? But how often through the day, oh, I'm hungry. Well, I mean,
Right.
how, I know you fast.
Yeah.
So, but, and honestly, that fasting is testing you. It's giving
Oh
you
yeah.
that intestinal fortitude to know that, Lord forbid, if you're ever in a situation, you can go for a period of time. And I think that we need to, I think the whole goal is to, I mean, I like I said, we don't want to go out and put ourselves in dangerous situations, but
No,
it's honestly healthy to test ourselves. And there's
of
several
course.
ways to, to embrace that testing, or that change for the better, getting better. I think that should be our goal.
Yeah.
Achieve
Now,
greatness.
right. Yeah. Now, and and I go back to yours and my uh weekend trip we had planned last year.
No
And
intestinal fortitude involved in
no,
that.
we bailed on it. We did bail on it. But just to be clear, just for so everyone has optics here, Paul and I were going to do a moto camp, or a motorcycle camp, where we were going to meet up in Pennsylvania at a beautiful campsite, and we were both going to take the motorcycles. Now,
Now, when we say campsite, we mean not like in a cabin at a campground.
right,
We're
it
talking
was.
put up tents,
Oh yeah, it was.
the whole nine yards. We
Again,
were
it was
camping off our
right.
bikes
Right.
and
Tent,
everything.
yes. Tent camping, one backpack, everything was there. We would still go and, ride to town to probably grab a meal, but it was tent camping. But it was and it was on this guy's property. We pushed that trip because it was raining.
It
Now
wasn't just raining a little bit.
well, it wasn't just raining a little bit, and it wasn't raining when we were going to be at camp. I was going to be riding 4 hours in the rain. Paul was going to be riding 4 hours in the rain, or whatever that time, but it was going to be a full-on ride and then a camp in the rain. um I've ridden in the rain, I can do it. I've camped in the rain, I can do it. I don't want to ride and camp in the rain. I'm sorry. It just, so we made the choice. Now, does that mean that we gave up? No. I mean, it's also about safety, right? I wasn't going to ride 4 hours in the rain when you didn't have to. If you're riding and you get caught in the rain, you can literally pull over underneath the highway. You can stop, you can pull off, you can wait it out. At the end of the day, I wanted to make sure that I was going to get to the campsite without any harm.
Well, and you
I,
left out a part,
which
small
part?
part. But when we got to the campsite, we were planning, like, while we were there, we stayed in an area that was full of great riding,
Yes.
you
Oh
know,
yeah.
like
Well, that, yeah,
canyon
of course.
riding and all this
Right.
great scenery, and that was
Yeah.
gonna be in the rain.
Right.
So that whole week's like we were doing this for the, to hang out and talk about podcasts and talk about future events. But that experience was just going to be like, man, we just need to put this off because it would have been
Yeah.
miserable. I don't know if
So with
anybody's ever put their stuff in their backpack all wet, but then you get it out,
yeah.
everything becomes wet. Hey,
Oh
did
yeah.
that
Yeah.
in Ranger school. you know?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
with that being said, we are going to do that. We're going to do that in 2024. But one of the experiences that I want to do, and I want to test myself with this, is a winter camp. I watched this guy's video and doing it out in Alaska. I want to do that. I want to head out with a pack and set up shop for one night, two night in the snow, but really, really see what I can handle. So that's my kind of check and test for me. I've been saying it for a year, and I'll do it. We've had a kind of a weak winter here. I mean, knock on wood, because now it's probably going to
Yeah.
dump,
Good, good
30
job.
inches. Right. Good job, Chris. But we've had just very little snow, but
Well, I went through the same thing 2 years ago when I walked the C&O Canal, and
right.
I would love to walk the Appalachian Trail. It's just not
Ooh,
in my future just because of my knees, but
right.
that doesn't mean I can't hike. That doesn't mean that there's not flatter terrain out there for me to
Of
get
course.
almost just as much out of it. And for those of you guys that don't know the C&O Canal, it's from Washington, D.C. to Cumberland, Maryland, almost 190 miles. And in my 20s, 30s, no big deal. That's
Right.
nothing. And I just turned 50, or I was close to turning 50. And I'm like, this is something that I needed to do. And for, to challenge myself, because so many people told me, and I even convinced myself that I couldn't do anything like that ever again. And I woke up one day and like, no, that's crap. Like,
Right.
it's in my head, and it might take me a while to do it. And it actually took me shorter than I thought it was going to, but 190 miles in 11 days, camping at campsites. And I don't necessarily like camping on the ground anymore, but you
Hey.
get up,
Yeah.
you pack everything up, you walk, you got a lot of thinking. I I wrote a lot, which was extremely healthy for me,
Okay.
at the time, or just extremely healthy, period. But it's one of those things where it's like it kind of gave me the confidence. It's like I might not be as fast as I was, as strong as I was, but darn it, I'm not dead.
No.
I can still go out and achieve this stuff. Like I can
Yeah.
still go out and live, and
Exactly.
accomplish stuff, and test myself,
Well, right. Yeah.
and,
Yeah. Take
learn.
something that yeah, exactly. Take something that you are not good at. You haven't done it. You're not comfortable doing it, and learn it and try it. And it doesn't always have to be a physical thing, right? I mean, it definitely does not have to be always physical. Doing something physical is great, but get out of your comfort zone and try something new. You know, I say it a lot here. When we started to do this show, I had no idea how to do podcasts. I went, and like you said, right, we have access to all of this information. Figure it out. Go and find out what you need to do to get one of whatever it is you want to accomplish done, right? So I went out and I started to learn that, and I was like, okay, well, now we have to elevate that. We have to step that up one more thing and start doing video. I had no idea. Like, I had no idea how to do like lighting or anything like that, but I had to learn it. And then I was like, okay, cool. Now I have this product, but then I need to do something after we get done with it. So I had to learn how to do post production and audio, like all of that stuff was outside of my comfort zone. And mentally, it was obviously, this was the mental part. I was like, how can I not be able to figure this out? And there were days that I was just like stressed because it wasn't doing what, I was pushing the buttons and the thing wasn't doing what I wanted it to do. But it you when you run into situations like that, you need to step back and just let it breathe, right? Let the room
It's
breathe.
almost like this is scripted, because my very next note on my piece of paper is embrace change. And there's three
Right.
different ways to embrace. You can embrace physical change, mental change, or spiritual change. And you just hit it right on the head. It doesn't have to be physical, even though it is good to go out and at least
Of course.
walk,
Yep.
establish some, grow stronger.
Right.
We get to a certain age where our body is not growing anymore, it's dying. So we
Right.
need to alter that. It's like
Right.
I'm almost 51. Every day I'm growing a little shorter, getting,
Right.
so I need to do something
Right.
to stimulate my body, but it's also mental. Read a book, write
Yes.
something, learn a new learn a new hobby. And then the spiritual side of it is, grow spiritually. And I'm not saying, necessarily based on religion or anything, but there are so many different ways that you can just grow spiritually by learning, meditation, yoga. I don't even know all the stuff, but it doesn't have to always be a physical change where you got to go
Right.
out and lift heavy weights,
Yeah.
but the most important
Yeah.
part, like you said, take a step back, evaluate your life. I was told a couple months or a year ago, a gentleman asked me, it's like, what would be your dream day? Like, if you were a millionaire and you could do anything in that day, what would it be? I was like, I don't know. I get up, I'd work out, I'd go shoot at a range. And then he's like, well, what's keeping you from having that dream day right now? It's all in your head. You don't
Yeah.
have to be rich to do this stuff.
Right.
It's, now if your dream day was to get
Well,
on a
yeah. I mean,
jet, but most of
yeah.
our dream day is basic stuff,
Right.
and
You just have to be
and
motivated.
exactly, exactly.
And going back to what you said about the change um mentally, and you talked about reading a book. um I've had family members like my grandparents where dementia and Alzheimer's set in, right? And that's a very hard thing, and if anybody's ever dealt with something like that, that is a very, very hard thing to see, right? When your mental acuity starts to drop and you're not as sharp as you were. Your eyes are going to go. Again, we're talking physical. Your hearing is going to go, but you can and you can do things to fix that: hearing aids, glasses, whatnot. But there's
Put
no
a dot on your pistol, whatever.
put a red dot on your pistol, whatever. Hater. But there's no aid that you can apply to your brain. You can't, like, sure, maybe 10 years down the road, you can put a chip in your brain and make you think like a younger person again, but you need to test yourself. You need to challenge yourself. You need to keep your brain sharp. And there's
You need to
things out
stimulate that
there.
sucker.
Right. Exactly. And there's things out there that you can do to do that. And they may be uncomfortable things. You may have to challenge yourself with a freaking word problem again. What were the word problems in math when it was like Billy's got 4 apples, Susie's got 3 apples, and a Snickers bar. How many do they have in total? Like, I mean, some of those are challenging, but they're probably not that bad. You turn that part off in your brain. It's time to turn that back on. Being
Everybody always says, I never use algebra. What did
Oh
I
God.
learn that for? Well, that
Right.
algebra was for us to grow, to stimulate that part of that brain. And now that we stopped using it, that part of our
Right.
brain stagnant. So let's
Yeah.
activate that again.
Yeah.
Not saying by taking an algebra class, but by
No,
doing.
but still, like, I mean, understanding angles. Hell, man, if you like to play pool, you need to understand angles, and there's some math involved.
I like to shoot guns. There is math involved.
Math involved. So, I mean, that's a great. I'm glad you just brought that up. Shooting your pistol out to, 25 yards, cool, with a red dot, with irons, whatever. But you take that scoped that magnified scoped rifle out, and you need to start understanding, mills and MOA, and and that is one of the things that is still an uncomfortable situation for me to try and figure that out. Now, some people, because I haven't done it enough, and it's definitely something that I want to do, but some people understand mill radians and minute of angle, or MOA, like you may understand how to brew coffee in your Keurig. It's that easy for them because
Well, it's
they've
like
done it
riding a
for so
bike to
long.
them because
Right. So,
they do it every day
right.
until it's unconscious competence. So yeah,
Right.
exactly.
So, all right. So, I guess if I were to leave anybody with something, that last bit that you just brought up, the physical, the spiritual, again, I like those, but it is the mental challenge that, or the challenging yourself mentally is, I think, the most important thing. Being able to think yourself out of a situation is, I think, just as important as being able to fight yourself out of a situation. And that
Well,
may be
when
a
you
bold
think of
statement, but
when you think of the physical side is still mental because your body is not going to your body can do more than what your mind thinks it does. Your mind will quit, before your body does.
so
Like
I'm
you
gonna go ahead.
No, go ahead. It's fine.
No, no, no. I was gonna ask a question, and I want to see where we can go with this.
Okay.
What is what is what is the best way to win a firefight?
Train,
And
prepare.
okay, yeah, but
You're not gonna win a firefight if you just think to yourself, I'm gonna
I
go out and you gotta put the time in.
okay,
Is that not
just
the direction you're looking for?
no. Well, yeah. Follow me for here for a second. What is the best way to win a firefight? To not get in one,
Oh yeah. Well, part
right?
of that is mentally preparing.
There we go. That's exactly where
You
I was
know,
going with it. So if you start to think and see the situations that could put you in harm's way, you can literally avoid that by making smart decisions, understanding, being prepared, being observant, being a trained observer versus, just not thinking about the daily activities. And you can, for those that are listening, you can put that on a whiteboard and figure out what that looks like in your life. But, you know if you have to be in one, then obviously training is important. But the best way to win one is to just never be in one. um
well, how many people take karate or martial arts to like kick somebody's butt, and then they
right.
become a black belt, and then when they do that, they achieve the discipline to walk away from that fight, and they
Oh
learn,
yeah.
I don't even need to kick that person. I know I can, but what am I going to get
Right.
out of that instant
Exactly.
gratification? And I'm going to feel bad. I know I can do it, but it's given me
Right.
the ability, the discipline, and the mindset to walk away. Now, I
Yeah.
couldn't exactly do that overseas, but
Well,
you
no,
know,
exactly. Right.
but
All of
but
those
even taking
situations
a
are
concealed
dependent.
carry, yeah, even taking a concealed carry class or being an instructor, I have learned that now that I'm trained and I have this ability, that a lot of the times getting in those situations can do more harm than good. I'm gonna
Oh yeah.
you're gonna go to court. You're gonna get that firearm taken away.
Right.
That can snowball into such a worse situation. And sometimes, not even saying sometimes, most every time, it is better to walk away, find an out. But in order to find
Right.
an out, what do you have to do? You have to take those blinders off, look at the overall picture, exactly, problem solve, and that's
Exactly.
an unsavory situation, uncomfortable, that we need to be comfortable in. you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
we need to not stress out, so on and so on. And I think if we do that, because we're training mentally, spiritually, physically, psychologically, it's going to better prepare us for every situation out there, not just a gunfight or a flood or a hurricane, but man, we're just prepared. And I think that's the whole goal, is to constantly go out, and we're never expect perfection,
No.
always. But I'm not doing this stuff to be perfect. I'm doing this to be better,
Right.
to
Yeah.
so.
And one of those things is, we talk about what we're more likely to use on a daily basis, right? Firearm, medical gear, whatever. And it's always going to be the medical gear. But, you know, you if you have taken a medical class and you keep a medical bag in your vehicle or a tourniquet on there, but yet you can't handle the sight of blood, or like that's a problem, because then now you're just a victim. You're just another body that somebody needs to take care of. Like, you know, are you able to handle the sight of blood or tissue or whatever the case may be, that you walk upon? I mean, a huge gaping wound where you have to stick your finger into a hole to stop the flow of blood, so you can then get an Israeli bandage and you can pack it with gauze and wrap it. Like, can you handle that? So these are some of the things that we talk about. It's one thing to get training. Obviously you're not going to be able to really get that real world experience, not
Depends
telling
on
you
where
to
you
go out
go.
there and exactly. That's true. That is
Well, and
true.
that's
But
that's a great point, because nobody in their right mind wants to see that. Nobody wants
no,
to see somebody suffer. Nobody wants to be around an individual that is screaming and wants their mom, and and just but it's it's a mental, you have to get through that mentally, just like we're talking
right.
about. I
Yeah.
don't want to, I don't, I've applied pressure to wounds so many times, and I don't want to put my hand on there. But
Right.
the more I kept myself engaged, and I talk about him in my classes, and I even experienced this overseas. If you're in a situation and you take a break, and if you take a breath and take a break and take a knee, all these emotions are going to come out. You're thinking too much about everything that happened. And I about the near ambush that I was in. And
Right.
as I'm moving towards that enemy position, I had to stop, because, like, man, we're walking through an area known for IEDs. I just can't go up there and clear that position. So I stopped. I took
Right.
a knee. I called up Afghans to clear with metal detectors. And when I did that, all these emotions started flowing through me, and I started shaking, and I was in shock. And my medic came up. It's like, where was you? You had to get shot,
Right.
and freaking out. But I took a second. But if my mind would have stayed engaged, if I would have had tasks to do, and that's why, I always talk in my classes, if Lord forbid you defend yourself and you shoot somebody, you need to don't think about what just happened. You need to tell somebody, call 911,
Right.
do this, administer first aid, task people, find something to do. Because if you take a break, and I'm not talking stepping back and look at the overall picture and look what you did, because sometimes you have to
No.
look at the overall picture to see
Right.
if what situation is developing around you. But if you keep your mind engaged, it's going to help you, because you're not thinking about the putting your finger in a wound. You're thinking about, how do I keep this guy alive? What can
Right.
I do to help? And
Yeah.
so many, I don't want to put my hand on a wound, just like nobody else wants to do it,
No. Right.
especially
Yeah.
nowadays. But
Right.
hey, what's the bigger picture here? And I
Right.
think if most people looked at the bigger picture, yeah, I don't want to shoot in the snow. I want a beautiful
Right.
day. But when I get
Exactly.
done shooting in the snow,
Oh,
man,
you
I
feel,
learned
I
something
mean,
about myself,
yeah, of course. You feel
because
accomplished after you do that.
exactly, it's like
You
a
know,
self, like, yeah, I did
yeah.
that. And for
Yeah.
civilians, they might. I mean, I've got a couple people that have taken almost every one of my classes, and they're like, there's a sense of accomplishment there. Well,
Yeah.
okay, don't take a class, but what are you doing to achieve that sense of accomplishment? I make it easy
Right.
for you. Just sign up
Yeah,
for one of my
exactly.
classes. Sign up for a
There you
ZERT
go.
class. You'll get a sense of
Mhm.
accomplishment.
Exactly.
You
That's
know?
right. That's right. Um, you know, I think a lot of awesome information came out of today's show. I think that people are going to sit back after listening or watching this one, and my hope and my hope with every episode, and the goal of every episode, is to get people thinking and checking themselves and their tribe, right, their group, their people, they communicate back. I hope that every ZERT member, or every member that, or every person that listens to this show, or every show, goes back and has conversations with their loved ones, their family, their friends, other ZERT members. I hope that some of these become topics for the meet and greets that the members have. I hope that they talk about them after spending a day on the range. So it's episodes like this that I want to make sure we keep putting out there, right? It's cool to talk about what we saw at SHOT Show, or the new Glock killer handgun that's going to come out next week, or any of that stuff. But it's these that people can probably relate to. A lot more people can relate to versus the newest 1911 that just came out, right? Because the goal is to not have it ZERT just to be about firearms, which is how it started, but it's to just to be more of a prepared individual and a survivalist in today's day and age, and that encompasses a larger scope of items, or of items to talk about and things to focus on. So awesome episode today, Paul, and thank you for coming on today and discussing it.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. So guys, listen, until next time, we always end this, and just to kind of go here, we always wrap this up, and then, obviously Jamie always throws something in there. So, folks, that's the end of today's show. We do appreciate you spending some time with me. I always like to say, you guys stay safe out there and don't be a resupply. And then, Paul, what do you got?
Yeah, man, just constantly every day work on that intestinal fortitude. Just even if it's little things, just try to be a little better.
Awesome. All right, guys, until next time, you stay safe out there. ZP002 out.